What's up, dudes? Welcome back to another episode of Rhomas Men's Team. Pretty simple. We are a group of guys helping each other make progress towards each other's goals. If you're new to the channel, awesome and welcome. If you want to help support the channel and join our pro team, head over to rhomasteam.com/pro, where you can contribute to us on a donation basis. We also give you access to exclusive content, mastermind groups, etc., etc. So anyway, hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the team. Mr. Larry, what's up, brother?
Good morning to you. You know what I just discovered?
What's that?
July 14th, 2023 is the first experience in recorded history that we've had to be involved in this day.
It's true, and it will be the last.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's make it memorable.
All right, let's do it. I've got a happy topic for you if you're down. Mr. Ray, what's up, brother?
Hello, friends. As I warned you, Wes, hello, Larry, my signal will likely be in and out. So,
all right.
There you go.
It's all good. I wanted to lean on you guys. So I've got a buddy of mine who we had a discussion, and he said that he was depressed, and
Yes.
I'm really bad around this topic, as probably you guys could guess. It was like kind of immediately where my head goes is I sort of almost immediately reconcile it with, well, wait a second. Are you really depressed, or are you exaggerating the definition? Like, are you expanding the definition just to meet what is really sadness or something? Now,
like, I'm so depressed that like my favorite show is over for the season.
Yes. So I marry that information with, like, wait a second, you do have a tendency of sort of hyperbolizing, and then also just kind of what I've roughly consumed around that word, just from like different books on how many people are diagnosed with depression who really aren't. Like, it seems like antidepressants are given out, sort of like stickers.
Halloween candy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like stickers at the grocery store in the bagging line, sort of a thing. And then the third piece of information that I had was, he said he was depressed from a recent argument, essentially. And from my understanding, I take the information that Jordan Peterson talked about and said, look, if what you're experiencing is a result of being lower on the competence hierarchy or the social circle, then you're supposed to feel negative, because it's your body's signaling saying, hey, you need to fix something, and that's why you feel bad. The whole like lobster serotonin thing. So I guess I want to throw it over to you guys and get your opinion on that, because my conclusion originally was, hey man, you're not really depressed. You're just feeling a natural consequence of a fight, and you just have to work yourself out of it. As opposed to what Jordan Peterson says, if everything's going great, and let's say there is no fight, and you still feel bad for what is seemingly no reason after you talk to a psychologist or a trained professional to identify these things. So, Ray, if you don't mind, I'll ask you to go first, because you do have experience. You have experience. We've talked about this topic, and you have good service for right now. So let's do it.
Yeah. So thank you for the privilege, Wes and Larry. I am one who occasionally suffers from depression, and I don't mean the, like you said, like, damn, the Barbie movie wasn't as good as I thought, I'm depressed. It's like medically diagnosed, right? And so I take Prozac for that, and that helps the lows feel not as low. It's not a miracle drug. It's not like Ozempic that both makes you lose weight and disintegrates your gallbladder at the same time. Like, all it does is just make the lows not as low. I still need my personal program, right? My exercise, my therapy, my journaling, and all that. The scorecard, this group, connections with others. So if you don't mind, without breaking his confidence, like, what kind of life transition has prompted him to raise this issue. Because getting fired, getting divorced, death of a parent, all three within 6 months, like I've recently experienced. Oh, no, I mean, I'm flirting with, can throw somebody into a depression, right? It's a kind of a transition disorder, is the way they used to call it. Is there any major life change in this gentleman that could prompt that?
No, I believe it was just an argument. It was a one-off argument with his spouse.
Yes. Okay. And you got to give me more information. Is it I understand when arguments really impact your self-esteem. I mean, that happens to me a lot. Where there's an unfortunate expression called "there's a chink in your armor," which means there is a vulnerable spot in your armor, right? So if this argument was a discussion of his ability to be a breadwinner, his ability to be a man, his abilities as an intimate partner, his weight, whatever it is, if that hits him right in his most vulnerable spot, that might be what he's talking about.
And let's say it is something like that, where the arrow pierces the armor, like you're saying, because it found that one weak spot. Is that how should I say this? Should everybody feel that way? Hey, you hit one of my wounds and that really hurts, and it might sting for a while. When does that cross over into depression? What are those clearly identifiable things?
Well, this is okay. So I would say depression is a medical condition that maybe we have no control over, right? That you can't really, that some of us can't really do a mind over matter kind of thing, right? There are non-pharmaceutical practices that can assist you in getting out of the rut of a depression, which are basically our scorecard, right? Your exercise, your sunlight, your connection with others, your journaling, your learning, your meditation. I think those can all mitigate the worst harms of depression. But for some of us, medication is necessary as well.
Larry, sorry, go ahead, buddy. No,
okay, well, I was just going to say that's something I'm trying to work on right now is something what we talked about in 12-step recovery and in mindfulness and meditation and stuff. Is maybe you can't control whether the person is going to insult or injure you with their words, but you can control how it makes you feel. Like you can control the feeling, right? So for example, if you take it personally or if you dwell on it, over and over and over again. So that's something that's easy to say, hard to do, that I am currently trying to practice, which is in arguments, can't prevent them from making the sound and it going in your ear. So you can't prevent it from hearing. You don't have control over hearing it, but you have control over how it makes you feel.
Got it. And Ray, in your opinion, when does it cross over? Because could somebody say, for instance, and Ryan just put this in the chat saying, a psychiatrist says if it affects your ability to work or relationships, it's clinical depression. So I guess for me, where that gets a little tricky is if I'm sad, could I see how it impacts my work? Of course.
It's such a subjective kind of boundaryless kind of definition. That's why half the country is on pharmaceuticals, right? For me.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe only a third of the country should be, or a quarter of the country should be, or 10% of the country.
Exactly. And because when I listened to that Andrew Huberman podcast with Tim Ferriss, and where Andrew Huberman was referencing a conversation that he had with, I believe, a psychiatrist in Stanford University, and the psychiatrist basically said, who was a professor now, basically said, many of the times, and he said the vast majority of air quotes depression cases would be solved by literally, Ray, what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Sunlight, sleep,
Diets.
healthy practices, etc.
Yeah.
So that's where, to me, that then gets into the Jordan Peterson conversation of depression. It's like, oh, you're just not doing the practices, which is why you feel bad. And you should feel bad when you're not doing the practices.
Right.
Versus, hey, I'm doing all of the practices and there's something wrong with my hormonal system, and because I still don't feel good. I'm doing all of the things, I'm getting all of the results, but my brain or my biochemistry, I know I'm misusing terms here, is just not catching up to the reality.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know if it's the vast majority of times, but unfortunately, often we start with the medication.
Right.
Right. If we ever even get to the exercise, diet, talk, connection, sunlight, meditation, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this, just to pick on one metric here, when I was listening to a podcast not too long ago, one of the physical therapists said he asks patients how much sleep they've been getting, because that's really important for recovery. And he said now he asks them to prove it. It cannot just be a self-reported, oh yeah, I get good sleep. It's like, no, show me your sleep app that shows me you get good sleep, because humans are horrible at self-reporting, particularly when they're in a bad mental state. So I have talked to people. Well, Ray, let me ask you this, if you don't mind just asking.
Go.
When going through the list of, how comprehensive was the questionnaire for, hey, Ray, let's find out if you are depressed?
No, it was, how long is your average doctor's appointment?
Oh, yeah. With the doctor, if you're talking about actually with the answer is an hour and a half, but
seconds.
With the doctor, it's 27 seconds. Yeah.
Right. So
if I might interject here.
Please do, Larry.
Yes, please.
Even though it's driving me crazy that my camera's on here, not there. But anyway, I think it's you got to be really careful. It's a slippery slope, and a lot of psychiatry is antiquated. It's based on a premise of something happened to you, and let's find out what that is. And so it perpetuates revisiting, and it doesn't ask the right questions. And what most people do when they're about to get divorced, or they've lost a job, or they've broken up with someone, or someone died, they'll start to reflect on, what have I done? And terrible question to ask yourself. I mean, if you want to be depressed, then ask yourself, what have I done? Because now you're the cause of all of this discomfort, what the children are going to go through, what everybody's going to go through. And if you're not depressed, then there's something wrong with you, because you are looping a trail that only ends up in. And then when you talk to a doctor is not a psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist is still trained on antiquated, either Freudian or Rogerian. It's a premise that if I can't make you feel better, then drugs will. And we don't even want to talk about the kickbacks that they're getting for pushing the pharmaceuticals. And we know how powerful the pharmaceutical companies are, but we're so naive, well, I must be depressed, must be clinically depressed. And that's less than 1% of the population is truly clinically depressed. The rest have talked themselves into it. So rather than what have I done, the question one should ask themselves is, what can I do? And what can I do that allows my higher self to show up? Because if we're not practicing bringing the best we have to the party, then what we're doing is we're reiterating our shortcoming. We're reiterating that we're less than. And man, that is a spiral that only leads one to feel less about themselves, not better about themselves. And I'm not talking about giving up accountability. I'm simply saying that if you want to talk about something that has created a lot of discomfort in people, it's they don't know that they're asking themselves the wrong questions. And So we don't know that they asked that question. We just listen to what they have to say. And then based on that, we call them depressed or optimistic or whatever it may be. And that really upsets me. That really is an insult to this remarkable species called the human and what it's capable of and what it's supposed to be doing and who it really is. It's just like we're living in a third world country that just doesn't get it. And so let's talk about it. Let's make it worse. Instead of helping the person start talking about, okay, boy, that didn't feel very good. All right, do you want that to take place again? No, I'd rather not. Then what do you think we should be doing that we're currently not doing? So let's not go repeat behaviors that got us right back to where we started from and then think we're better now. And so I would too, if I didn't know this loop that we can run in our minds and I was feeling bad, hell, I'd take a depressant. Man, it's socially acceptable. It's not like it used to be where you didn't want to share it with anybody. Now people want to buy it from you.
Yeah, which I imagine has pros and cons. It shines light on the topic of, those people who are actually depressed and able to talk about it now. It's more publicly accepted. And also just a quick disclaimer, and everybody, I hope that you guys understand this. Larry as well, and Ray as well. Let me say first and foremost, I am asking this to learn. Because I also don't want to go on the other side and sound like some ignorant ape where I'm like, oh, nobody's depressed. Like, what are you talking about? You should never feel, just suck it up. Like I am not saying that. I honestly want to learn. And at the same time, be willing to push a little bit of saying, hey, like my friend is almost using this as like a back off button to everybody around him, which I would almost imagine perpetuates, right, the feeling of sadness or the feeling of depression that he's going through. I find this to be very similar to the common back off button or like the trump card of, well, my feelings are valid. It's like, okay, well then we'll just say that for everything and we'll never address like the real topic, So I almost feel like he might be using this card as that, not maliciously, but then what happens if you tell everybody around you that you're depressed? Everybody either backs off you or they huddle around you as a victim. But again, in either case, you never really solve the underlying problem. So,
well, when you say I'm depressed, it's like saying you can't see this pimple on my forehead, can you? And so now, what is the only thing we're seeing and hearing from this person? So I totally agree. I'm not talking about put your big pants on and be a man. I think that's bullshit. Be a human, be genuine. But you talked yourself into this feeling, so therefore you can talk yourself out of that feeling. And if it truly is clinical, if it's something that's biochemistry, well, let's give yourself a little assistance until you can get back on your feet. But I think we go to that way too quick.
Yeah, well, right to that point, I guess it might be different in Canada. What is the sequence of events that happens for getting prescription? Is it you first go to your psychologist or I guess your psychiatrist, because those are the ones who can issue medication, or can you literally just go to your primary care physician?
Yeah, you can just go to your family doctor, which is what I did. And one appointment 5 years ago, basically.
Wow.
But
Wow.
But with my history of addiction, and I mean, I'm pretty sure he made the right call in the case of me, right?
Yeah,
I'm quite confident he made the right call, and because I've adjusted it down and up over the years, and so I do have a kind of active role in my health. Like I'm my own kind of best advocate for health. But again, I wish, there's the financial incentives are perverse, right? Where a doctor won't say, sorry, time out, guys. A doctor won't say, Like there's no financial incentive to discuss diet, to discuss exercise, to discuss sleep, to discuss meditation, right? The financial incentives are all prescription based, or right, like.
And I know that we're saying that. Do you guys know that to be true? Because I've heard the same thing. I don't know if it's true though, and I will, So Larry, I think Ray just cut out. Is it true that doctors do get actual kickbacks from prescriptions?
Well, a kickback can be a trip, can be gifts. Okay. It can be a multitude of things, and it's a variable depending on the integrity of the doctor. The challenge is most MDs are not psychiatrists. They're not trained as specific into the irregularities of not only biochemistry but of our own mind. They're more of a guy that can fix your car, but is not really behind the design of it or the intricacies of how it truly operates. And that's a rough. And I think being a doctor is an amazing thing, and I give all the kudos. But I think too often when you're trying to put as many people through your office as you can because your income is being cut by a variety of insurance companies, you don't have time. You don't have the time to spend. You don't have hours to spend to find out whether this is clinical or if this is just something that someone's talked themselves into because they were told you're a worthless mother and they started to loop it. Maybe I am. I was told that when I was younger, and I'm feeling a little bit less. And so what it does, it's a domino effect, and it triggers all of the weaknesses that we've had impounded upon us since we started paying attention. And then they become truths now because we've had someone who has a medical degree go ahead and now affirm all of this. That's all we need.
Sorry, go Larry.
Well, go ahead.
So if we walk through, let's use Ray as an example. And I think MFG would actually be, I'd love to get his opinion on this. So MFG will bring you up to speed real quick. MFG is just joining. For those of you who are just listening and not watching, a friend of mine got into an argument with his spouse. He and I are having a conversation probably a week later, and he is saying that he's depressed. So then I am horrible when it comes to this kind of thing, because usually my mind goes to like, okay, are you actually depressed, or are you just sad as a result of a normal consequence of something bad that happened? So that's the first part that my mind goes to. So now we're talking through it. And then Ray was vulnerable enough and kind enough to share that he is on antidepressants. And so then we asked him, okay, how did you get those antidepressants? And what he basically said, and Ray, if you have service, feel free to chime in. Don't let me put words in your mouth. He basically was saying, hey, I went to one doctor's appointment, and it lasted, he said you could count the seconds, basically. And now that was one doctor's appointment 5 years ago, and now I'm on a prescription for antidepressants. So I hear that, and it kind of feeds into my thought process about this. So I guess first and foremost, it's like, how can we as men who know nothing really about this, at least I have no idea, but I would say a normal man. So how do I use the knowledge of what I know and having conversations like this? So MFG, what is your opinion on depression? And do you think way too many people are diagnosed with depression who aren't, or do you think it's the opposite? What are your thoughts?
I think it was the Ben Franklin quote that it's important to know the difference between depression and ordinary misery.
Beautiful.
And also, in addition to that, I think that, to your point, Wes, that people often conflate actual feelings of disappointment or frustration based on circumstances or expectations as clinical depression. And I've been down the same road as well. I mean, I was on a school shooter cocktail of psychiatric medications. I mean, through my primary care, same thing Ray said, just like a 10, 15-minute appointment, maybe max. And I was on like 60 milligrams of Adderall a day, 2 milligrams of Klonopin, which is like benzodiazepam.
What is Klonopin? Sorry.
Same thing as Xanax.
And what is Xanax? Sorry. I'm sorry.
Like an anti-anxiety that's easily abused.
Yeah, I just looked that up too.
If you're familiar with Jordan Peterson, how he had that whole process of coming off of those drugs, that was essentially Klonopin. It was a benzodiazepam. And I was also on an SSRI with Prozac. And in my experience,
sorry, dude, I'm so ignorant when it comes to this.
So Prozac is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which falls.
Now I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, it's basically the most widely prescribed antidepressant. Prozac was kind of like the original antidepressant that rolled out. I want to say in the early '90s, and Larry could probably speak more to this as far as when that really came into the mainstream. But I mean personally, I have a hard time believing that we're going to take, because it is an art. It's not a science. They can't do a blood draw or do pull your levels. Like this idea, the idea of a chemical imbalance has been completely destroyed. Like that doesn't exist.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There is no such thing as a chemical imbalance, because then it would be like, oh, we can see you're deficient in this or this, and we'll just supplement with that. No, you go in there and tell them you're fucking sad, and they give you pills, and they say, does that help? And it's a completely subjective, figuring process. Which, I mean, they
come back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly, and also too, the studies that have been released in the last 15, 20 years that show that like 30 minutes of exercise has the same impact as fucking antidepressants, like 30 minutes of cardio a day. So personally, I think that most people are way over medicated. I was on Adderall on a prescription for 10 years, and then I quit cold turkey. One of the hardest things I ever had to quit. But now for me, I find I'd rather figure it out on my terms without clouding my judgment with all kinds of exogenous chemicals, because I think more people are on that shit than they should be, because people want a simple solution. Or also too, if you're shame based as I am, it's easy to think like, well, there's something broken with me, so maybe if I take a pill that will fix me. And it's easier to reconcile the fact that like I'm inherently bad and I need this thing, and this thing will, once I have this, then I'll be okay. And then you can almost externalize instead of having to reconcile within that you are the answer to the riddle is you, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because where I struggle with it is, and again, before you hopped on here, MFG, I also don't want to go to the other side of like the ignorant male ape that's just like, oh, just grind it out, man. What are you talking about? Yeah, that sort of thing. So it's a very fine line. And when you start having these discussions, it gets touchy on both sides. So I want to make sure we have empathy towards it, which it seems like we all do. But at the same time, I agree, man. Like, if you look at your own example, should you have been on that cocktail of medications? Probably not. Like, I think it's probably, let me ask you this. Would you say definitely not, buddy, looking back?
Wes, it like sends shivers down me right now thinking about because I mean, and I know you're not that familiar with it, but being on, Adderall is essentially prescription meth.
Okay. Speed, yeah.
Yeah. And then fucking Klonopin is like a heavy duty, I'd say it mirrors a narcotic in its capacity. So like I was on these drugs where I would wake up in the morning, take my meth. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then if
you were highly focused.
Oh, dude, I was highly focused. And then whenever I had to deal with things I didn't want to deal with, I could just numb myself out with a benzo. So you kind of get stuck in this space where it's not even that you're not continuing to grow. I think that during that period of time, my growth was not only retarded, but was regressive. Like I went backwards because I wasn't learning actual coping skills. I was using this crutch in a way And again, there are applications where they are necessary and people need them and all that shit. I'm not discounting them completely. However, I think just to make that part of your daily routine, it has dangerous implications for most people, at least for myself.
You know, I'm sure you guys will agree with me or not. The challenge that many people who find themselves as experts, and that sometimes has a doctor in front of it, is preconceived notions. A medical doctor, if you walk into a medical doctor, he's going to find out how you're feeling. He's going to look for physiological. He's going to look for something going wrong in your biological system. You tell him you're fine, but mentally that's preconceived notion is, and you need to take this. You know, I've got several patients waiting out there. They don't have time, as we mentioned earlier, to have any kind of discussion, to peel the onion a bit, to maybe refer you to someone who has the expertise to be able to determine the difference. And I think the same thing happens to us to get ourselves into the position of going to a doctor because we're not able to resolve our own mental condition. And that's where the catch-22 comes into place. You know, MG is not feeling good about himself, and rather than finding and figuring out why and what we could be doing to break that loop, he's given stuff that only perpetuates his anxiety. I mean, that's why kids sell Adderall, and you know, it's really good for, you know, taking tests and for studying, but it's not a resolution to not feeling good about yourself. And so I just think it's people should have the opportunity to perhaps be a little more educated of the power of their own conversation and get some help on that, so that it isn't triggering these feelings of inadequacy that we all have, and personifying those that maybe something else will help me get over this, because now our problem becomes magnified and we're in worse shape, like MFG was talking about.
Well, and also, Larry, to your point, that we're essentially you're supporting a negative belief that you can't resolve this issue within yourself. You know, although the intent initially is positive that you're deferring to an expert and seeking help and being vulnerable enough to go to a doctor, but then when all that they have to offer isn't, you know, actually figuring the issue out, but they have to get it done quickly. It's a medication model. Then you are now like creating this negative belief or this limiting belief upon yourself that, you know, I can't do it on my own. I need to have my pills. Like when I would have to get my Adderall refilled and I couldn't get a hold of, I would kind of I'd start freaking out. And, you know, in this real, like, you know, because I thought I needed it, you know, and that's the scary part, is it's not even a physical addiction, although that does exist. There's also the mental addiction of thinking that if I don't have this, then I'm not enough. And I mean, and also too, they're fucking dangerous, man. I mean, I had a benzodiazepam induced seizure. Yeah, while I was driving, and I hit a parked car doing like 60 miles an hour. My head went through the windshield, like fucking extremely. It was real bad. Like it's just you know. So there's you know, and also too, I don't know what I had the propensity to abuse things anyways. I was a former fat kid. I couldn't put peanut butter down. And they gave me fucking prescription meth. You know what I mean? What, are you shitting me? It was a fucking good time.
Ryan, I wanted to have you on because you're writing some notes if you're still on here. You said hanging out with somebody who has catatonic depression or depression included psychosis, or depression induced psychosis. That's real depression. So Ryan, I know you're on mute. I think you're probably at work. So feel free to chime in. What are your thoughts on that? Because I would love for the other side of it, of somebody say, hey, no, this is what really qualifies. I have friends who have this, and because I want to make sure we include the holistic conversation on this topic. And Ryan, I think you're still on mute. I think. Let's see.
Yeah.
How's that? Yeah.
Better.
Okay, so yeah, it's just like there is a scale, there is a spectrum of it, and if you ever work in an inpatient psych unit, you can really see real depression where it's shutting down your neurology. You can't move, you can't eat, and if everybody had a little bit of experience with that, go volunteer at a psych unit and help out, and then you can see how real your depression is, or how much you're mythologizing it, so you can wear it like a badge of honor, like, oh, I've been depressed before.
Right.
I went through the same thing pretty recently. My wife and I were having this huge fallout argument, and I did fall into a state of depression for a good month or two, because we were talking about our marriage and the stability of it, or the instability of it all, and so. Yeah, that was pretty gut wrenching at times, and I'm not on any medication. I just go to the gym, and that's all I really need right now. And just like that, plus now we're doing couples counseling. It's really helping. So my heart goes out to your buddy. It's tough when you're in it. Have any sort of network or any understanding of psychiatry. But I don't know, maybe the ways that you can find that you can, stay involved with him and have the time and patience to listen to him, because a lot of people really won't listen, and you're kind of trained as a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Psychologists are a little bit better, but they have this thing where they try to avoid, what's the word? Shit. Larry, help me.
Leading the witness.
Say that again?
They try to avoid leading the witness.
No, they try to avoid the effect of listening and helping, affecting their own psychology. So if you listen to people enough, Jung came up with a term around it. I can't remember what it's called now that I'm talking about it, but it's it rubs off on you, and if you want to be in it for a long time, you avoid it. You avoid going in depth with people, taking the time to be with them, because it rubs off on you, and you'll quit. And I did. I quit because I didn't care. I said, no, I'm going to spend more time talking with somebody, and it'll fuck me up, but that's the trade-off. Somebody else's suffering is resolved by somebody else, maybe going into that with them a little bit. What's the damn word?
So I think I understand what you're saying, Ryan. Let me know if I'm off here. I think what you're saying is we have to be somewhat careful when talking to somebody about this, and that psychologists and psychiatrists are specifically trained to be able to navigate that conversation without themselves being also now sucked into that particular emotion to an unhealthy degree. Is that what I'm hearing from you, bud?
Yeah, it's because if you really want to, people feel it when you're actually feeling something with them, and they can tell the difference when you're just being scoffed off by somebody, because that's what a depressed person experiences all the time, is people being like, yeah, whatever, man, or I don't have time for this. So it's if I figure out the word, I'll post it in the Discord. It's going to kill me now.
Is it a mess?
But yeah, it's this phenomenon in psychiatry, is that you keep yourself at an arm's distance so that you don't actually ruin yourself in the process.
There's an association that gets created, an identification. I worked in college in a rehab facility back in the 60s, where if someone came in OD'd on acid, they'd incarcerate them. Now imagine that. So we got together with the police force and got them to bring them to us so we could talk them down. And my first client was a young man that was brilliant, who had taken 4 hits of acid, which I had conversations with them, and he overcame every avenue that I explored to help him recognize what he was going through. And by the 24 hours when we were done, he got up and said, "Thank you very much." And that was my last day. Because I had assimilated so much of what he was sharing with me. And I was not trained to be able to create that buffer, to understand the filter of not taking on and not asking myself all those same questions that he was dealing with. And I understand what Ryan's saying. I mean, if you aren't well trained and have a great sense of self, you can really succumb to it. So you've really got to create distance, but yet be compassionate. And
it's a novel idea.
Pardon?
Because you're absolutely right. And so one thing that I find helpful is I foster really open and vulnerable, mutual relationships with friends that are going through similar challenges. Because then that way, like my buddy Mike, I can call him, when I'm spinning out, and he'll talk me down. And he doesn't have to keep that buffer from me. In the same way, I can be there for him without having to have that buffer, because it's not a professional set. I'm not doing it 8 hours a day for a bunch of different people. It's like when we can be that for others, and then they can be that for us, sometimes it's more advantageous than seeking out the professional help. At least in my experience, and I've done both, and it's kind of counterintuitive, but I found more from this group and from fostering those friendships and relationships with truly like-minded growth mindset individuals that are on the same plane, that understand the circumstances. And by the way, I've spent probably the most money on psychiatric stuff. I mean, in 2014, I spent $25,000 to go to a 2-week intensive outpatient program in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is great, but I've pursued all fronts, and there's something about the peer-to-peer aspect of it, as long as but that's dangerous too. So I should be mindful how I speak on that, because if two people aren't, in a good place, then they can kind of bring each other down as well. So.
Well, and to wrap this up, one piece, because I know that one of the common things it seems like is, hey, I know what you guys are saying, or we're at least implying, and then I should do this. I should get more sleep. I should go and I should get exercise. I should drink my water. I should do all these things. But that's the thing, the depression won't allow me to do that. Now, what comes up for me is Tim Ferriss and Andrew Huberman talking about mood follows action, not the other way around. Like, of course, you don't want to do that if you don't feel like it. But if you start doing it, then you will feel like it. So that's my personal perspective on that. Again, this is outside of what Ryan is referring to formally, clinically, like absolutely non-negotiably, obviously depressed, can't even move, that sort of a thing. So I'll put it on the table one more time and we can wrap it up. Larry, what are your thoughts about that? Hey, I could do all these things. I could do the scorecard. I could do all those things, but the depression won't allow me to do it. What are your thoughts?
My first reaction is, what have you done to get to the point where you can't change your mind, that you're so succumbed by the circumstances enveloped you and you can't find your way out of it? I just would be careful not to drug my way out of it, because you're now going into something that's even far deeper than what you're trying to escape from. Mm-hmm. And I do see the value of a drug if you've had the right education. And I think the best thing is find someone who, like Mike was talking about, that believes in you, that listens to you. And yet, like, what do we call our friends? It's somebody who gets in our face when we're not taking good care of ourselves. And that can happen mentally as well. What the hell are you doing? You know, is that the person you want to spend the rest of your life with if you keep having these same arguments? And you start talking about it, because if you could have talked about it with the person you're having the arguments with, you may have found some resolution. But instead, we try to be right, and we fight for what we believe in, and that just enlarges the argument. That's why seeking some assistance from others, from friends, and I mean friends. We have a lot of acquaintances, but very few friends. And that's what I got from what Mike was sharing. That there's people he can call up and they can help him get back into, hey, yeah, I'm a decent human being, and let's see if we can work this thing out.
Love it. Awesome. MFG, what are your final thoughts here, brother?
I agree with you completely, Wes. I think that, and I put in the chat there, but you can act your way into a new way of feeling. Very rarely can you feel your way into action. If you sit around and wait till you feel like going to the gym, well, I would be about fucking 800 pounds. I never feel like doing anything. I don't feel like going to work. I don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning. But once I get my feet underneath me, I believe I saw a reel about it the other day, called behavioral activation. You know what I mean? It's once you get doing something, it catches a momentum and it self-reinforces. But it doesn't mean that it's easy.
Right.
It fucking sucks all the time.
It's hard. But it's hard almost every time for me. Like it's like 90% of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's doing it rather than thinking about doing it. Just start doing it, and then I couldn't agree more. Because otherwise, we'll procrastinate, rationalize, and stay the same. Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, love you guys. I want to bring Phil on here real quick. Phil's new to the team, so Phil, just want to formally welcome you to the group, brother. I don't know if you can, I assume you can hear us. You're on mute and I can't see you, but you're coming in towards the tail end, but just want to welcome you formally. Phil, you there, buddy?
Hey, thanks so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, yeah, I'm not sure why my camera's not working. I'm on my phone right now, so it might be an issue, but yeah, I appreciate you guys doing this whole thing.
Yeah, tell us a little bit, real quick. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got on the team, what's going on for you.
Well, I'll try to keep it brief because my life is extremely fucked up. But
join the club, brother.
I guess a very brief summary of my situation right now. I'm living out of my car at the moment because I lost my job a year ago, and I've done nothing to fix my situation since then. I did after losing my...
Sorry, let me cut you off here real quick. MFG is actually just showing off today by being indoors. Normally, the MFG, right over there, Mike Gibbons, you see him right there. He lives out of a van with his dog, and just an absolute beast. So yeah, so Phil, you're in good company, my friend.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, I just lost my job a year ago, and instead of doing anything about it, I maxed out my credit cards, and now in $25,000 of debt and living out of my car. So that's how mentally well I'm doing. And yeah, I have a lot of fucking problems. I don't want to fucking unload on you guys right now, but yeah. I guess I don't really know exactly what else to say right now, but I'm trying to fix my situation, I guess. It's hard to unravel. I have so many different challenges.
Dude, I was literally going to say, like, if I had a wish for him here, just man to man. And by the way, you're new to the group, so we always say it's a circle, not a triangle. Like, and we mean that sincerely. Like, saying your life is fucked up, dude, all of our lives are fucked up. Promise, absolutely promise. We're just on different, we're on different timelines. We're on different things. We're doing different things. So I was going to say, man, I wish MFG, you guys would talk. And then literally as I was thinking that, MFG put in the comments saying, hey, shoot me a DM on Instagram. I would love for you guys to connect because MFG is an absolute beast, like absolute beast. So I would love for you guys to talk if you're down for it.
Hell yeah, dude. Yeah. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I'll hit you up, dude.
Yeah. And then Phil, it would be great, after you guys talk to have you back on this main cast. And then let's chat through it, brother. If you're down for it, we do this live every Monday and Friday. We shoot a link out through the Discord. And then it also, if you sign up, I believe through Crowdcast, you get like a notification when we go live.
Okay. All right. Sick. Yeah, I'll be here on Monday.
Hell yeah. Dudes, love you guys. Thank you. Phil, welcome to the group. Brother Ray, if you can hear me. Love you, buddy. Larry, thank you. MFG, as always, it's a pleasure, my friend. You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you all.
See you guys. Love you, dogs.